Howdy, NG Houston. Welcome tonight. We're really excited to have with us a speaker from NGConf 2018, which is going to be next week. And tonight he's going to talk about a subject that I'm pretty excited about. It's near and dear to my heart. The past 2 to 3 years that I've been with NG Houston, I know that getting prepared for Angular from AngularJS world and learning how to upgrade an application from AngularJS to Angular has been a big part of my interest and my involvement with the group and trying to help other developers get themselves and their applications ready. So also excited to have a great panelist, a great set of panelists with us tonight. So we'll go ahead down the line here and want to introduce them. First, we have with us David Owen, and when he's not running things over at Thomson Reuters and having his hands involved in applications all around the world, he authored a wonderful repository called NG Rosetta to help us with this very topic. So you want to say hello, David?
Hello. Thanks very much for having me.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for joining us. And then next we have John Bauer, and John is with a wonderful consulting firm and application firm, help build applications for enterprise companies out of St. Louis, I believe, called Oasis Digital. Also very set of bright people. They're also instructors at Angular Boot Camp, and glad to have him with us tonight as well. You want to say a few words, John?
Hi, I'm glad to be here.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us. And then we have Sam Julien, who helped us about a year ago, or actually about 8 months ago, get the word out about how to upgrade from AngularJS to Angular. And he's actually the creator of a wonderful online website called Upgrading Angular JS. And there's an excellent online course there that I've just started recently and really enjoying that course. You want to say hello, Sam?
Yeah, hi from Portland, Oregon. I hope the weather there is better than it is here because it's pretty nasty outside. But thank you for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Thanks for joining us. And then we also have Bonnie Brennan, and she founded NG Houston. So without her, none of us would be here right now. I know I certainly wouldn't be. And so we're glad to have her with us tonight as well. You want to say hello, Bonnie?
That was such a good introduction, Denny. That was so cool. You did really well. I think that was a better introduction than any of the introductions I've ever done. That was awesome.
Well, thanks. Okay, and last but not least, we have our speaker, Hanyu, who, like I said, he is going to be with us at NGConf in Utah next week, covering a topic which is going to help us expedite our upgrade process from AngularJS to Angular. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Hanyu and let him show us what he's got.
Hi, everyone. Hello from California. It's an honor for me to join you guys virtually. And thank you, Bonnie and NG Houston and Danny for the invitation. Today, I'm going to talk about AngularJS migration, and this is going to be the same talk that I will be giving at NGConf next week, but that will be only 20 minutes. Today, I think we have a bit more time, so I think I'll go through the same slides, but and then we'll dive into the demo and Q&As. During the demo, you can stop me anytime for any questions you have. I hope it's going to be a discussion because I know that we have a product that we try to help people with the migration, but migration itself is a very complex topic. And I don't think anybody can claim that we got it right. So let's get started. Let me share my screen. And start the presentation. All right, so first a bit of introduction. My name is Hanyu Xiao. I'm originally from China, and I came to the US in 1990 to work on my PhD degree in physics. But I found my passion in writing software. So I switched career, and I've been in the software business for over 20 years. I've done a lot of things, but one thing I've done often is building developer tools. And the latest project I worked on is called AngularDoc. So what is AngularDoc? It's basically a static analysis tool that can scan your Angular or AngularJS projects and we extract metadata from your source code, and we piece together the hierarchy of modules and components, and we tell you what your route tree looks like, and also what's the import relationship between your components. And then based on that information, we could do code generation, for example, for the migration. So that's the essence of the product, but we have different ways to use it. We can actually, if you use VS Code, we have an extension you can install. So if you click on the Angular doc button at the bottom left, and you can look at this project's components and their relationship, and we present to you the classes we found in different categories, and we have a module diagram to show the module composition, and you can look at also the route tree and import diagram. But then we have a web version of it. If you log on with the same credential, and then you can look at the same metadata that we extracted from your project. And so let me skip through some slides. And then just recently we announced AngularDoc.org. What this is basically we scanned GitHub to look for all the Angular projects that we can find. Of course, these would be the public repos. We'd love to have our hands on private ones, but GitHub wouldn't allow us. And I don't have access to the Russian hackers like Donald did. Sorry, that was a bad joke. But basically, we had these about 88.
No, Hanyu, that was a good joke.
So we had about 8,800 repos analyzed and searchable. So if you haven't seen this, I urge you to try it. And if you have your open source Angular projects, probably it's already on. They're already on this website. So what we're trying to do is that to find ways to help people with the static analysis that we provide. So I would talk about how these are relevant for the migration, but let's step back and take a brief look at the overall state of AngularJS migration. Because we had access to 8,800 repos, we could run some interesting queries against them. So one thing we did was we tried to find out how many of these repos actually have Angular upgrade package in the dependencies. Why are we interested in this package? Because this gives us the upgrade module, which can bootstrap the AngularJS application within the Angular application. So the idea is that you initially only have a shell that's Angular, and everything else running inside will be your original AngularJS application. But incrementally, you can migrate one component at a time, and eventually you have 0 AngularJS components. Everything will be running in the new Angular. So interestingly, we found over 1,400 of the repos that have this upgrade dependency. So that's 16% of the total, and that's 1 in 6 of the repos. So that's very impressive. And it means that a lot of people are trying to do the upgrade. So that sounds like good news, but on the other hand, we went one step further. We plotted the Angular versions for these 1,400 repos. And we found that on the left side, we start with Angular 2.0, the very first version. And then at that time, we had about, I mean, not at that time, because we're not talking about a timeline here. We're talking about a snapshot of GitHub as of March. And the version, the repo set on version 2.0 actually had the highest number of, highest number, it's majority of these repos, 842 to be exact. As we advanced the Angular version, the number drop cycle rock. And when we went beyond 2.x, the numbers became very small to be very insignificant. So that's kind of bad news. I'm not sure what conclusions you would draw from this, but it doesn't mean that people are giving up on the idea of upgrade, right? Because when 2.0 first came out, people are very excited and they want to try how to use it for their own AngularJS application. But the fact that we have over 800 projects stuck at 2.0 is not good news. But whatever conclusion you draw from this diagram, I think we can agree on one thing, and that is migration is very hard. Because we're looking at a legacy system that probably somebody else before you built, and you're trying to understand the scope of the project, the interdependencies of these components. So at the beginning, if you want to plan for the migration without a good visibility of your original legacy system, it's very hard to get started. And then when we get to the actual migration, the idea of the upgrade module is sound, because we always want to do things incrementally. We start small. When we get things done piece by piece, we have more confidence, we have more experience, and we can go on to take on bigger pieces. But upgrade module can only work if you do a lot of things right. So there will be steps A, B, C, D, E, F, G to be completed before you can say, I can turn it on and everything runs fine. And then eventually, when you're upgrading each component, you deal with migrating the business logic from your source code. And you also have the HTML template to migrate. Because in the new Angular, the syntax is totally different. They mean the same thing, but they don't look the same. So putting all these together, if we do everything manually, it's just going to be a very tedious process, especially if you have a big project. That will be very hard. So now what we are trying to figure out is if we could have a tooling that can help you along. And that's why we came up with the idea of Angular Copilot. So what we call it Copilot because we still want you to be in charge, right? We are not performing any magic so that you can flip a switch and say, run this tool and everything is done. It's in a lot of senses, it's like a TurboTax, right? It tries to shield you from the complex problem, but still you need to provide guidance. You need to provide good input so that the tool can produce good results for you. So what is Angular Copilot? It's basically a desktop edition of Angular Doc. So you can load your local projects into this desktop application and have it run the same static analysis. But the benefit is twofold. So first is that you don't have to upload anything, not your source code, not your metadata. So if you feel you want complete privacy of your commercial product, this is the way to go. And then because we have access to your local file system, we can do a lot of code generation for you. And then that's why we think that it could play a big role in the migration world. Because first of all, we give you an overview of your legacy system, right? So you have a good idea how many components you have, how they are interdependent. And then when we get to the migration, we have a wizard that can guide you through the process of creating that hybrid project. And then we also help you with the JavaScript code migration and also the template migration. So these are a few slides that show the screenshots. But if we, since we have more time today, maybe we can start a demo right away. And then you guys can stop me for any questions or discussions. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Yeah, sounds awesome.
All right. Okay, so let me exit this and switch over to Angular Copilot. And by the way, we are still in beta, and I think we're trying very hard to have 1.0 released on the weekend. So if you want to try this, definitely wait until the weekend, I think, after we announce 1.0. But this is what it looks like when you first run it. And we have a few repos as showcases, but you can click on the tab to go to your local category, and then you can import repos from GitHub or your local drive. And then if you decide to sync your metadata to our backend, then you have this my repos that you can view from the angular.io website. So here I have imported two repos. The first one is basically an Angular project. So you can filter these components by their types, and you can basically look at the same thing that I showed before. And then in addition, we try to implement the cookbooks that will help you do these routine jobs automatically. And in this application, I have imported Angular PhoneCat. This is an AngularJS application from the Angular team. So we're going to use this as the project to migrate. It's a fairly simple project. It has two components, one service and one filter. But I hope that by going through the entire migration process live, we can see what's actually involved in the migration and what are the opportunities to automate. So let's get started. And I should also point out that this is actually a premium feature. I mean, the migration. So it's not freely available as the static analysis. But if you are thinking, well, maybe then why am I wasting my time here? By going through this demo, I hope that you can see that at each step what we're actually doing, because this tool is trying to automate things, but it is doing something, right? If it makes sense for you, then even without this tool, maybe you have some other ways to do it in any way possible. So let's get started. Click on the My Upgrade button, and you can pick a directory where you want to create a new project. So we're calling it Upgrade by default. So once you confirm that we're creating a new project using Angular CLI. So this is basically a very first Angular project that has a simple app component, just as you would have when you run Nginx. But here we have a migration menu, because we know that this is going to be a project for migrating your Angular PhoneCat application. So if you click on the dual boot menu, we're looking at basically a wizard that takes you through 5 steps to create this hybrid project. And the first thing you do is you import the source code from your AngularJS project. And we know that it's under app. So now it's imported into the Angular project under SRC NG1. So let's take a look what we have here. We have, as I said, an Angular CLI project, right? And we have copied over SRC NG1. So if you look inside, you have the AngularJS application. And in the SRC, we have the original app component and app module and so on and so forth created from that engineer command. So it doesn't look very exciting. So let me do one thing. Because we have so many files added, let me first commit this. So the benefit of doing this is we reduce clutter in this Git view. So later we can compare files easily to see what the tool have done. So here. Now I have a much smaller set of changed files we can look at. So you can see that we actually replaced what was created by default with what you had in the index.html file. If you compare that with the original index.html, we removed all these script and style sheet imports, and we took the body and put it into app component. So that was the very first step. And then we located the third-party libraries that you are going to import. We have 3 tabs here. Basically, we're doing a yarn install. And the system tab groups all the new Angular dependencies for you. So these are created by default from the engineer command. And the projects tab is your dependency. And that is migrated from the boa.json file. If you don't have one, you can use the add button to add it one by one. And then the dev dependencies, we have most of them from the engineer command created by default, but then we also added some types definitions for the Angular 1.5, I believe. So the reason we did this here is that instead of doing the npm install or yarn at the command line, we do it graphically. So if anything failed, you can see that and you can edit a particular entry and then you can retry. Because sometimes when you migrate things from Boa, the package name may be different and the version number may be written in a different format. So oftentimes you need to come here to correct it. So now the installation is done. And the next step is to configure third-party frameworks. So what that means is actually, if we have used Angular CLI, this is the file where you specify any scripts, style sheets, or assets so that it can do the build for you. Behind the scenes, it's using Webpack, but I think Angular CLI is trying to shield you from that complexity. So you do things in this file, but instead of doing this manually, we have this UI to help you with that. On the third step, we have some frameworks pre-configured. So if you use jQuery, you click it. This project uses Bootstrap, so I click on Bootstrap, and we automatically configure the Angular CLI file for you. So if you look at this file, switching to the source control view, we actually put the jQuery script under the scripts, and we put the Bootstrap CSS under styles. If you have more to configure, you can come to the fourth step, which would be 3 tabs, and you can add any new scripts. Some third-party libraries will ask you to put certain entries in the scripts and the styles. In addition to Bootstrap, we actually have 2 style sheets in the AngularJS application, so you can select them, and then assets. For this application, we have images for the phone and phones definitions. So I'll add these as the assets. So when you use this wizard, you need to have some good understanding of what these assets are in your original AngularJS. If you missed some, then you can still have your opportunity to come back here and add it graphically, or you could do it directly from the text edit. So when we have everything configured like this, we have third-party dependencies, we have the assets, and we're ready to create the so-called upgrade shell. So this is going to, yeah, I clicked on it. This is going to set up all the imports and everything that's needed for the upgrade shell to work. Because we have done the static analysis, we know which AngularJS files to import. So at the end, it says that it's done. And at each step, we actually list the files that we touched. So you can always click on a link, for example, and bring up the file in VS Code and see what we have done. So here, if you look at the Git view, more files have changed. For example, in the main, we imported the AngularJS files here, and we imported the upgrade module, which is bootstrapping your AngularJS application. And the application name obviously came from your original project in the index file, I think. Did I miss something there? Oh yeah, here in the ng app, you have the PhoneCat application. So we actually we didn't just make up these names. We actually searched for the right information and put it in the right place. So we're actually done with the project creation. So here, let's run ng-serve and pray. Well, you need to pray because oftentimes you may miss some files, some assets, so it may not just run in the first trial. But then if that happens, you can come back and revisit these settings.
We're all praying with you, Hanyu.
All right. And the good thing about this is we are not well, we're helping you generate code, but we're not imposing any of our framework or something. So after you're done with the upgrade, there's nothing that's left from Angular doc. It's as if you wrote this code yourself, but we only did the auto generation for you. So here it says that everything is completed. So we can come to localhost 4200 and see how it runs. Looks like everything's working, and
wow.
And you can do search. So you still had the exact same feature that you would expect, and that means we have been successful. And if you don't believe me, you can look at the console output. It is running Angular app.
Pretty cool.
Right? Yeah. But this is a very simple project, grant you. However, if you have a larger project, you actually get more value out of this because you don't need to go search for all your AngularJS files and do all this setup. So now this part is successful, and but let's do. Oh, okay. So let's switch back to Copilot. As you can see, we have a set of new menus appearing under migration. So if you look at summary, we actually migrated all your modules. So for each module in your AngularJS, we created an Angular module, the ng module for you. So that's already done. But we have 2 components, 1 factory and 1 filter to migrate, and also 2 lots. So we have them listed here. And every time you have the old AngularJS file, and you can have a button that says upgrade. And then you have a third column called dependencies. So we try to tell you, for example, these filters and factories don't have dependencies, but components, because we extracted metadata, we know that, for example, these 2 components all have the phone service injected. So you will want to migrate the service first, then you can start migrating your component. If you had more injections, they will show up here. So that's a good way for you to plan your migration. But before we do the migration, let's do some preparation work. Here, I think it will help if we can enable the debugging, because oftentimes when something didn't quite work, they will show up in the console, and you need to step through your code. So it will be very helpful if you did some editing, and then you can see right here in the terminal what errors you might have had. So let's do that. So I'm trying to add the Chrome debugging, but this default setting is not good enough. If you run it, you run into some issues with the source map. So we actually, in our VS Code extension, we added 2 small entries to help you with that. You could have done this yourself. You can do some Google search. You find out where people mention you need to put this setting in. But every opportunity we find that we can make it easier for you, we will do that. So this is an example of that. So with this ready, we can now launch with ng-serve. So basically, it hooks with your so now everything is going to come back to the VS Code. So now let's work on, here you see this message, but as we start to do actually the code migration, you can see more messages coming. So the easiest migration probably would be the filters. So the original, excuse me, the original file looks like this, right? Your filter, it's a check mark. Depending on true or false, it will put in a check mark all across. And the migrated code, you can click on the second column, which will give you, brings up the generated file in VS Code. So you can see we basically took the body, but we set up the pipe, did the configuration automatically, and we also changed the code call module, which had the new pipe in the declaration and exports. So that's a small example of what we can do in the code generation. And then we can move on to the factories. So we have a phone service that's basically a resource. It loads the phone definitions from a JSON file that we have added to our assets. So now if we click on this upgrade button, we generated the new service added to the phone module like this. But you see that immediately you got error messages. So that's the benefit of this Chrome debugging. So let's take a look at this generated code. First, we want you to populate this interface that basically defines the JSON file's content. Oops. So I will just type in a few of them. And then we set up the HTTP client in the import and inject it into the constructor. And we have 4 methods: query, get, save, and delete. For this, we don't need save and delete. We don't allow modifying the from definitions. It's read only. But here you can see that we want you to define the service endpoint. And for this, it's a big definition file. And you also notice that we are turning this, we're not using observable. We try to make it return a promise. We do this because it's a service that we will downgrade to AngularJS. So at the bottom here, you can see that we know that it's from your call.phone module, and the factory name is phone, and this is although injectable for Angular, we want to make it available for Angular 1. And so that by making these return promises, I think that it will help you with your legacy code. So you don't need to put the observables into your AngularJS source code. That's just my opinion. And we currently don't allow you to customize the templates. So if you wanted to generate something else, you can do that for now. But we do have them at the backend. So anytime we have updates of the templates, we can do it on the backend, and it's available on the desktop. So here we need to define basically two methods. One to get the list of phones, and the other is to get the specific information for a phone with this ID. So we'll take advantage of the template string, and that's it. So we're done. But in the output, you can see that it's complaining. That is because the service is ready, it's migrated, it's downgraded to be available, but the method signatures have changed. So the original calling code will not work. So you can do one of two things. You can either say, I don't worry about. So in this case, we can see that there's a green dot on the phone, denoting that this service has been upgraded. So you could ignore that error and you say, I will just upgrade for example, the phone list component, so I don't worry about backward compatibility. But suppose you have a service that's used by multiple components. Some components may be will get migrated sooner than the others. So you still need to go back to your legacy code to fix the calling code. So I'll do that. I click on the first column to bring up the phone list, right? So here I will put this in the handler of the promise, and it returns phones, and I'll assign that to here, and let's see what happens. Yeah, actually it's running, right? There's no error message. So if you look at the UI, it is working, right? So if you don't believe what's happening, let's have some fun. Let's put breakpoints in these various places, and one breakpoint in the upgraded service to see how they interact. So I will refresh the page. First, it came to the phone list component from AngularJS. And later on, it came to the upgraded service. So indeed, we have the interaction between two versions. So now I'm done with this backward compatible code fix. And I can do that for the phone detail. Phone detail, it's a similar story. In the new service, the get method takes a single parameter instead of JSON object. So we're going to assign this to self.phone. That's it. So now, not only this phone list page work, I can also go into the phone detail page. So it looks as if nothing happened, but the service they're calling is now an Angular service. And this is the power of incremental upgrade. Your application is always functional, but you move one bit at a time. So here we're ready to migrate the phone service, for example. So click on this upgrade button, and it does some code generation in the backend. And now we have a whole bunch of files changed. In the phone list module, we inserted the phone list component. And let's look at the component itself. So here, as you can see, we can do a comparison of this with the original source code that we modified. We took this body and put it into the constructor. Right, it's right here. And we set up selector. We set up the template in this HTML file. So, and of course, at the bottom here, we downgraded the component to the original directory phone list. So here, it's with the help of these the TS lint and these quick fixes, we can say for the selector, it wants us to add the app dash as the prefix, but we're going to ignore that. We don't want to mess up with the original application. So here we have injected the phone service in the constructor because we understood that you had the phone injected into this controller. So here it's a simple matter of replacing this with this dot phone service, and we need to define this as a property and import the phone data definition. So as you can see, it's a matter of a few clicks, but if you had a more complex business logic, obviously you need to do more. But we try to flag out to you what you need to fix. So once you do this and save, now we had more problems. And it's pointing to ng source from your template. We didn't upgrade the template. So let's open up the template. And you can see here, this is our another important feature that we added to our VS Code extension. It understood that this is a migration project. So it needs to tell you that these are the old syntax that you need to migrate over. And you can invoke the quick fix, and it will point out a few things that you could do. For example, we found that we have better results if we migrate and fix all the dollar control first. So these are automatically removed. And then the rest you can say fix auto fixable problems. And everything's gone. And it's literally only a few clicks away. But there's one more thing. If if you notice, we have these filters and order and sorting from the old syntax, and the new Angular doesn't allow this kind of filtering, so we will have to remove it. If you want the same feature, you have to implement a get phones instead of directly accessing the phone and let it filter and sort in the template. So we have to remove this part, but otherwise it's going to run just as before. Right? You don't see any errors here, and over here you can you still have the phone list screen. The only thing missing is now you cannot do search and sorting. So that's the phone list component, and then you can move on to do the phone detail. And in the phone detail, we did a bit more. In this component, we actually have a route param to handle. So this is a concept in AngularJS. To use it in the Angular component, we had to use a provider class and have it injected into the Angular. But we try to make it look almost the same. So here, as usual, we disable this t-lint rule that complain about the selector naming, and we don't need self. And we can use this .phone service to replace that phone. And here, this router param, we need to remove the $, use this router param, and everything should remain the same. And we rename all the self and add the missing definitions and missing import. And finally, I think this is TS-lint complaint, saying the line is too long. So we save that. And again, I think it's going to complain about something. So it's saying that the pipe checkmark could not be found. We did the pipe migration at the beginning, and it's added to call module. But here we just need to import it into a phone detail module. And then we take care of that problem. But still, we need to fix the template. It's complaining about the template. And you see, we have even more places to fix. You can imagine what a tedious job it would be if you have to do this one by one, right? But as usual, we replace all the $control. And then if you want to see the progress, you can do it one by one. But let me try fix all problems. And error markers are all gone. So you save the file and you play again. Come here, click inside, check marks, they work, right? So now we're done with the component migration. And what's left is the routes. And here we pick a location strategy. So let's try a path. And then it's actually set up in the routing module. But we also point out to you that you have two places we identified that you need to fix in order to switch over to the new routing. One is that in the phone detail component, remember we had this AngularJS provider injected, and we had this code commented out. We generated the code, but we had it commented out. Now we only need to replace the route params with this active route. And this is going to change. And I don't want to be typing all the time, so I have have this to copy over. And if you want to have more fun with the observable, you can do so. I'm taking a shortcut here. I'm using a snapshot. So this is the only thing you need to fix for this file. Then we come back to Copilot and see the other place that we need to modify. That is in this app component, we had an ng view. We need to replace that with the router outlet. Save it. And these are compiled and no errors so far. But if we come back here, it's an empty page. That's because we didn't finish the third step, which is to add these routes to Angular. So we can simply click on these links, and then we can open up this app routing module to look at what we have done. So indeed, we have added 2 paths here, and it's set up. And what's left for us to do is to set up the default path. Okay, and it's compiling, it's reloading, and looks cool so far. And we have this back. Now, but if we click on the link, it's not quite working. And that's because in this phone list HTML, we have this part that's using href that wanted to go to this old route, but we use the path strategy, and the href should be replaced by router link. We didn't flag this error because in some cases href may be valid. So we're not entirely sure what to do with this. We don't want to give out false alarms. So we didn't implement anything there. But here it's a matter of replacing href with router link. Have 2 places. All right. So it's running again. Let's click on the link, and it's working again. So in fact, now everything is running in Angular. We have completed the entire migration, and if you look at this progress, it's complete. So we have one more step to do. It's optional. You can clean up the AngularJS artifacts in our source code. So first step, we remove the upgrade module from the main.js. Take a look, it's gone, right? And if you then go on to the second step, it's going to remove the imports. And so if you look at the phone service, we had this commented out, and we commented out downgrade injectable and the other ones. So that's, then we can clean up the package JSON. We don't need any dependencies on the Angular 1.5. So the dependencies you added, well, I lied. We actually still had the Angular 1.5 dependencies here. But anyway, so we are actually done with the migration, and now you can, let's see if we can just delete this folder. I hope everything still works. I haven't really tried this step. Hopefully, even with this deleted, your application is not affected. I may be wrong because we have assets still here. We didn't copy over the assets into the new assets folder. So actually, I broke it by deleting the source code. But you can see that the idea is that we guided you through this migration process. You're not doing everything automatically, but you're not doing nearly everything manually, right? We saved a lot of manual typing and searching and stuff. So you can have this done basically now from the beginning of the talk. It's about an hour. We could do this migration in entirety in about maybe 20 minutes. So that's, I think, progress.
That's amazing, Hanyu.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
I can't, I mean, I was reflecting back when I was studying how to do this 6 to 8 months ago, and I think I did 2 sessions on AngularJS just to describe how to upgrade a small app, similar to this. And I didn't actually end up with a fully upgraded app. So this is pretty impressive.
Yeah, this is great. This is amazing, Hanyu. Really fantastic. Saving so much boilerplate. That's the worst part is all that manual template updating and just the grind of moving that stuff over.
I don't know how you're going to do all that in 20 minutes. You're going to be going really fast, like.
Right.
Yeah. So in the end, I think I wish to point out a few things. One is the angulardoc.org. You definitely want to check it out. And the last link is a blog on the Novel site. They describe what the upgrade Xiao is doing for you. So I guess we can open up for more questions.
Yeah, I've got one. I was curious, when you first start, do you have to start with a repo, like a GitHub repo, or can it just be some source code on the file system somewhere? What does it have to start with?
You can start with your local file. There's nothing that's tied to the GitHub. Okay. So that's the purpose of Angular Copilot. Because when we had the VS Code, VS Code extension, we had to upload the metadata to our backend. And people complain that we made sure we didn't upload any source code, but they don't even want their metadata to be uploaded. So this is only working with your local file system. But the reason we had the GitHub is that we had the benefit of doing file compare, so we can check out at each step what we did, like this. So it's easier for me to demonstrate the source code changes that we have done.
Great. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and also I think even without the migration, using the migration, as I pointed out, it's a premium feature. You can still import your AngularJS application. Oops, something is happening. Well, good thing is it happened at the end of the demo. So the idea is that you can still use this free tool to look at your AngularJS application. I must say that the success rate is less than Angular applications. There will be some cases that we cannot do the static analysis, especially if you have done some kind of wrapping, right? If you have another layer of indirection, some smart wrapper, and then we probably cannot find all the components. But I think you should definitely try it. If it does work out, it's a great help.
I have a question for you. When you're doing the more incremental upgrades, like let's say you had a bigger application and you couldn't do this all in one fell swoop. Have you been able to get the AOT compiling working so that you could deploy this to production? That's one thing I have run across, that I've had to separate out my AngularJS from my Angular code. Like I couldn't have the Angular.module stuff mixed in with my Angular 5 code. I had to really bifurcate that so that the AOT compiler would still work so that I could get it in production. Did you? But you're using the CLI, so I didn't know. Have you figured that out? Is that working for you?
Not really. First of all, I haven't really tried it in the middle of the migration, but I think a lot of times the failure of AOT is not because of the CLI or something. The problems I had was usually with third-party libraries. So it may be a tough problem, but it means that these third-party libraries need to be upgraded. And that's another challenge that we're going to face. And I haven't mentioned that here. For example, if you had a project that uses Firebase, right? But the AngularJS use a lower version. So when you upgrade to the Angular, how do you handle both versions of Firebase in the same system? And that's what I struggled most in the past. With this tool, I think itself is pretty solid. But when you're dealing with actual world applications, you have all those complications to fight for.
Sure.
Yeah, for sure. It's a tough one. The incremental update while deploying to production is a tough one. I've had to figure out a couple different things, but yeah, it's a bear.
Right. One of the patterns that I used for the hybrid role to still use AOT was to extend the tsconfig specifically for AOT, include an exclude statement specifically for the legacy source code. So I effectively masked it, and that worked. So I got AOT working with all the legacy source code in place, but the compiler couldn't see it when it was doing the AOT build.
Yeah, actually, David, I owe you a debt of gratitude. I actually I was able to add that whole section to my course because of your work.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, your AOT config with ngTools Webpack and the Angular 2 template loader and all of that. I use all of that in the course on the section on getting AOT working right in the middle of an upgrade, and that's I owe you for that, so thank you.
Oh, that's really kind of you. Thanks. Yeah, there was a spot there for about, I think, 3 weeks where my forehead was pretty flat.
Yeah, it's a nightmare, but yeah, you guys, you nailed it there, and that's a big help. That NG Rosetta really helped me.
Oh, thanks, man. I'm glad. I'm really glad to hear somebody got some use out of it. Besides just me learning it, building it was the best part for me.
Yeah.
What do you call that repo?
NG Rosetta.
NG.
It's pretty cool.
Oh.
ETTA.
I'm not sure if he's going to find it there.
I'm trying to find it here.
It's on GitHub.
Okay. We didn't flag it as
you know what? Here, I can send it to you in the chat.
Okay.
If there's value to that.
I'll definitely be interested to import it into the angular.org. We have now approaching 8,800 repos. And initially, the bulk of the repos were imported by us, but then when the people heard about this, they started to add their own repos to this.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm a little scared of what you're going to find. I haven't touched that thing in a few months.
Right.
I'm about a month out of date internally, and I'm sure I'm more than that externally.
I'll send the link to my course repo too, just because that uses David's same approach, and it's updated now. I added the update to Angular 5 with the new update to the ngTools Webpack, so that can be another example for everyone on how to get a hybrid app set up.
Right. Did you migrate it to CLI?
No, because for my goals, at least with company that I've worked for and things like that, we can't lose all that repo history, and things were a little complex with the Webpack build and all of that stuff. So
certainly,
yeah. So my goal was to make it so that you could do this step by step, incrementally, including AOT, while retaining your repo and everything, which is a bummer when you can't use the CLI, because the CLI is fantastic.
It's so good.
But
yeah, CLI is so much more convenient.
Right. That was one of the questions I had. So I actually have the repo that I just sent you has 4 projects in it, right? Angular pre 1.5 controller as pattern, Angular 1.5 post component pattern, Angular 2 at the time, now 5 standard version of it, and then a hybrid version that uses the 1.5 component pattern as the legacy and then wraps it in 1.5 or in Angular 5. And then I made a 5th one internally for the CLI. So I actually have a 5th repo to add to that thing that shows this is how you migrate this thing into the CLI and get all the goodness right in there. And I've been remiss in updating that. But Hanyu, I did have a question real quick. I saw early on you based the demo on what appeared to be an Angular CLI project for the Angular 5 portion, and I'm wondering if there's a requirement for CLI in any of the stuff that you showed using the tooling, not the patterns per se, but the tooling itself.
The tooling doesn't assume that it's an Angular CLI, but well, I take it back. It does assume it's Angular CLI because in the code generation we try to do ng generate for these components.
Okay.
So I need to find out if we could avoid using that, because it's a small portion of our code generation. We don't really have to use it.
Yeah. Would that be a bad thing though? I don't know. I mean, I've been I saw the craziest thing. I'm gonna say it was maybe a month or 2 ago. We onboarded a couple of new developers that were fairly young, hadn't had a ton of experience with Angular. And they, I handed them one of the NG Rosetta versions that was built by me, by hand, to roughly a year and a half ago or something like that. So it was all NPM based, no CLI anywhere in there, and they didn't know how to run it because they kept typing ng serve.
Yeah,
that was crazy.
Wow, that's the problem.
That was kind of cool and kind of scary.
Yeah. But usually, I think when you migrate, you have a complex build system, and then you try to juggle. Do you want to handle the same, build the same complexity into a new system, or do you want to go with what Angular team gives you? Right.
So it was my great pleasure to compliment Hans on that a couple of weeks ago. I got to have lunch with him. That's the author of the CLI, and he's done such a good job that. They're masking away all the complexity. So one of the things I always tell a new developer when you're working with the CLI, at regular intervals as you're doing stuff, just do an ng eject on a branch or something so you can kind of see what's actually happening under the hood. Otherwise, you're going to be missing some of the really cool stuff that's happening. Over time, does it really matter? That's where I was going to go. If you're saying, the tooling expects it to be CLI, should we backport it so that it doesn't? I don't know. I don't know that there's a need. Going forward, I think it's going to be even more uncommon to see developers working without the CLI.
Because we're spoiled rotten.
We are now, yeah.
So nice.
Yeah, but
I used to be scared of Hans because I thought he was really intimidating.
Okay, so I'm gonna both date myself and out geek myself by saying those of us that were doing this stuff with the beta. And it tried to do AOT. I mean, that first generation that I published out there that had 4 build steps that did the actual ng-CLI or ng-CI compiler by hand, right? And then ran it through rollup and all that stuff. That was a bit like the old first edition Dungeons & Dragons bard, where you had to be 10th level fighter first, and then 10th level thief, and then you could be a bard, and that was cool. But you really had to learn a lot of this stuff first before you could play with all the really good stuff. Now it's really easy, and like Sam said, you can use the ng tools dev kit, which makes it so much better. And I would argue those skills may or may not really be necessary going forward. Curious to see where it goes.
When I was a young kid, we had to walk both ways, uphill.
Both ways?
Kids these days have it easy.
With no shoes, cross Razor Blade Road and Rubbing Alcohol River.
I had to hand write my components in 14-degree weather, wearing snow boots.
Hey, Danny, if you turn off the screen presenter, we can see all the panelists. or right now we could just look at Hanyu.
Oh no.
You're at Hanyu.
So I got a quick question on, well, not quick, but a question kind of on behalf of people who are going to be using this, people who have been writing their AngularJS code and finally willing to make the leap. So we've kind of been telling them how to start making that progression, start using the 1.5 syntax, which I assume you have to be on 1.5 to using the component syntax to use your tool. Is that right?
No, not really.
No.
I think we tried 1.3. We can handle the controllers and UI router and things like that.
Cool.
Yeah,
Whoa.
and actually we had more problems with upgrades because they started using ES6
Yeah.
in the AngularJS, and our analyzer wasn't prepared for that. We were looking at the old JavaScript syntax.
So
And I think in general, the strategy recommended by Angular team, I believe it's the strategy they recommended, is to first move to 1.5 and then to the new Angular. But I disagree with that because why do you migrate to something that you're going to throw away in a couple of months? Right? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Well, the question I was leading to is what kind of pitfalls did you find that somebody might write in AngularJS that doesn't upgrade too well? Is there anything that AngularJS developers should be looking out for that maybe they do need to tweak in order to be ready for this upgrade?
Well, I think a lot of times it's the customization that they made towards the framework. If they had their own layers of things that loads the modules or define the module definitions or any kind of customization in that build, they try to be clever in generating some of the required source code, and that usually gives us problems.
Very cool stuff, man.
Just let me. Oh yeah, this was awesome. I'm definitely going to start recommending it to people who are looking for a path to upgrade as something to look out for.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it will benefit us also if we had more people using it. Then we can learn what we did right, what we are not doing quite right.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm sure after NGConf you'll get maybe more users than you possibly want. That'll give you more feedback than you might ever want. But I know I'll probably run a bunch of my projects through it and see what happens. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I look forward to working with you.
Yeah, for sure. Is it an open source tool? Like, are you doing this all by yourself, first of all? Because that's crazy. If you're doing
we actually have a small team. We had a very small team to begin with. We try to expand, but I'm funding the project, so we have very limited resource.
Well, I didn't know.
But Google is generous enough to. First of all, it's not an open source project.
Okay.
We try to commercialize it because I think the premium features like migration usually I think is best suited for business users. If you have a small or medium-sized project, you probably can migrate it yourself manually. It's not too big a deal. But if you're a large company, I hope we can get people that use it and pay for that. But a lot of other things like the AngularDoc.org, we try to make it a benefit for the entire community. And Google has been very supportive to that. They sponsored the hosting, the platform services for our website.
That's awesome. Cool.
Cool. Anybody else have any other questions? All right, I think we're running out of questions here. So, Hanyu, I just want to say that was awesome. I'm really impressed. I think that's a really cool tool. The only other thing I was kind of curious is what was the inspiration behind it? Yeah.
Well, I think as geeks, we all try to figure out how to not do work, right? So every opportunity we can do automation, we try to do that. And this is a pain point that I felt would be should be better handled.
Well, that's great, guys.
That was a good question. And John, I forgot to, I was on mute. That was a really good question that you asked about patterns from AngularJS. I didn't even think of that. That was really cool. Hanyu, one thing real quick. Have you seen any of the upcoming schematics update features that are coming in the next gen of the CLI? Because it would be kind of interesting to see if you could build your own schematic that would go through and do some of what you're doing here as part of the CLI as an extension.
Yeah, definitely. We tried to use it, but we didn't. We weren't very successful because I think it's still a moving target.
Sure.
So we tried to see if it stabilizes and we had more bandwidth. Basically, we tried to take on more work than we actually could.
We're familiar with
that. We
had
an episode not too long ago with Hans on doing the talking about schematics.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
We should get him back on sometime, and we could just start asking him questions and make him live code for us. Hey Hans, how do you do this with the schematic? And he'll be like, let me show you. He's actually really good. He did that. He did a very good job. We were asking him all kinds of questions, but I don't know if we asked him a whole lot of questions about upgrading. That is a great question, though.
Yeah. I think it'll benefit everyone if we are on the same kind of code generation tool. Then we can have people contributing their own template, their own source code generation.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering if you're gonna want to open source some part of that so that you can get some contributions on that stuff. So that, you're not doing all the work yourself trying to account for every possible use case, But you could still keep the secret sauce, the magic part could be commercialized or something. I don't know.
Right.
Something.
Yeah.
I just realized my countdown was wrong and I had a ninja edit.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. It's a great experience for myself. I've never done this a remote presentation before. It's been great.
Thanks for coming.
Great. Yeah, great job. Very cool.
I have a feeling you're going to be doing a lot more of them.
Yeah, hope so.
Maybe starting with Angular Portland. Hint, hint, hint.
Okay. Yeah. I tried to submit these to a bunch of other conferences, but they didn't get accepted. But thankfully, NGConf took me in, and
but they will next year.
Yeah, that's the one that counts.
Well, I hope I can meet you guys next week. Are you all going?
Yeah, I'll be there.
Yeah, we'll see you out there next week.
All right.
Great. All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. And have a good night.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Night. Bye.